Hello. Our story begins inside the medical facility at the Jedi Temple. Anakin and Mace Windu were dealing with injuries thanks to a trap laid by Boba Fett. Mace Windu's flagship was completely destroyed, and now there were 3 prisoners, one of which having just been executed in front of them on a hologram. Due to the injuries sustained from the crash, Plo Koon and Ahsoka would go out and find the bounty hunters and bring them to justice. At the same time, Mace and Anakin would have plenty of time to bond inside their shared medical room. Skywalker was impatient. He always had been, but there was nothing he could do and that severely bothered him. He needed to be in control, and while that was understandable, as a Jedi, he needed to learn how to let go. Mace was on the other side of the room. He was looking at his Jedi tablet and doing some work. As Master of the Order, there could be no rest. He and Anakin had a momentary talk before Plo and Ahsoka came into the room. Anakin was asking why Mace wasn't going to do anything, and it was simple. Mace wouldn't act like the child was acting. Boba was seeking revenge. The only reason Windu cared at this moment was because the young bounty hunter had hostages. Due to Master Plo's suggestions, Mace and Anakin would stay put inside the recovery room until they were cleared to leave. Mace sat back down at his bed and Anakin turned back towards the window. Silence filled the air and Mace turned to his tablet. Anakin was running through the thoughts of what he had said before. Mace referred to Boba as a child, which is what Boba was. He then finished the sentence mentioning how he wouldn't be like that child. It made Anakin consider if Mace thought he was a child too. The two of them never saw eye to eye, and Anakin never really understood why. He made a snarky comment before they returned to Coruscant about not getting praised, to which Mace kind of just rolled his eyes. If Anakin didn't realize that being a Jedi wasn't about accolades in the last 10 years, then perhaps he never would. Mace never disliked Anakin. Distrust him, sure, but Mace's own journal entries showed that of a Jedi Master who believed Anakin Skywalker would at some point bring balance to the Force. Mace could feel the change in Skywalker after Plo left the room, and so, without looking up, he asked Anakin what was putting him so on edge. Anakin was silent for a moment. He thought about saying the whole Boba scenario just to kind of deter the conversation, but then he revealed that it was nothing. Mace wasn't buying it, but he also wasn't going to force Anakin to say anything regarding it, so they went back to doing their own things and continued as such. The thoughts were still not leaving Anakin's mind, and the feelings of confusion radiated out of Anakin towards Mace. The Jedi Master knew that if there was to be a conversation, it needed to be initiated by Anakin. Due to how Obi-Wan referred to the relationship, it wouldn't be simple getting Anakin to talk. Eventually, Anakin stopped and asked Mace if he thought he was childish. This blindsided him, because despite the lack of trust in the relationship, Mace hadn't ever seen Anakin exact revenge on another being, so that's what Mace said in response. Anakin paused and then said that perhaps he made some errors in his own life. Windu turned the tablet off and put it to the side, looking over to Anakin who faced away from the window. Mace asked Anakin what was on his mind, and Anakin flirted around the idea of what he was burning to say. Did he want to say it, or not? He got it out of him, but it wasn't easy to decipher. Anakin said that he may have seized a moment of weakness to capitalize off his own strengths, but in that moment, he was also unable to stop. What? Master Windu straightened up his back and asked if Anakin was curious if Mace would refer to him as a child if he committed an act of revenge. Anakin nodded his head. Mace responded methodically that he would regard Anakin as a child if that were the case. This wasn't out of hatred, but simply the fact that as a Jedi, Anakin should have been better. Ironically, that's exactly what Anakin said, but kind of for the wrong reasons. He wanted to gain power to save people's lives, not avoid committing revenge. Mace sighed. He knew this would lead somewhere he didn't really want to go. Windu preferred the status quo. There wasn't tension in the room now or before, but it certainly could end in that fashion. Mace asked Skywalker if he'd like to share his experiences, and Anakin was hesitant to. All he requested is that he wouldn't get in trouble. Mace said that they would have to find out. Skywalker was uneasy, but he had Windu's undivided attention. Neither of them wanted an argument to form, and Skywalker didn't want to get in trouble. But Mace wasn't going to just punish Anakin. That wouldn't do anything. As a Jedi Master and as Master of the Order, it was his duty to instruct. With the war on their hands and so very present in their lives, they needed to be the best versions of themselves, so that they could complete the war and bring balance and peace to the galaxy. Skywalker stuttered over his words, but he told Mace the entire story of what happened. Honestly, it wasn't the biggest surprise, especially once Anakin said that he had visions of his mother dying. Mace remembered Yoda saying that young Skywalker was in terrible pain before the Battle of Geonosis. Skywalker was still quite emotional over the situation, and Mace could see that. but it did not deter the truth. Anakin murdered an entire village of people. Mace knew enough about the local peoples of Tatooine to know that not every group of Tuskens were like that, but there were some out there in the Dune Sea that did what that particular group did. He asked Anakin if it made him feel better. Anakin stumbled over his words. It did, but it didn't. He knew he was in the wrong. When he said he was a Jedi, he knew he was better than that. He was right. He was better than that. Mace knew that he wasn't lost, but he couldn't just allow those actions to go under the radar. Mace knew it would mean that they needed to do something. It wouldn't be easy, but if they wanted to resolve this, then it needed to be done. Mace rolled his legs over the side of the bed and told Anakin that they could fix this, but it would take Anakin's full trust in him. Skywalker nodded his head. They started out of the room, and towards the hangar bay. Not a word was said between either of them. Anakin just kind of followed him. Once they got to the Jedi starship, they met up with a medical droid that'd be taking care of them from this point forward. Anakin finally begged the question, and Mace just told him to strap himself in. They lifted off and jumped into hyperspace. Once they were in hyperspace, Mace turned to Skywalker and told him that he had been unorthodox and he had made mistakes, but revenge was not the Jedi way. Anakin was a little unnerved. Mace stood up, using the Force to pull Anakin's lightsaber into his hands, and then stepping away. Anakin almost had a heart attack when his lightsaber was pulled away from him. Mace stepped into the other room while speaking aloud. As he hid the lightsabers, he told Anakin that it was about time the two of them let go of their tension, and it was time that someone taught Skywalker how to let go of his desire for revenge. Anakin stepped up. He wasn't really pleased with this. He believed he was being talked down to, which was far from true. Mace looked at Anakin, who tried to, in a way, one-up him. But Anakin wasn't as tall as Mace, and that didn't really do him any good. Skywalker then said that as a Jedi he wouldn't understand, but before he could sit with the satisfaction of his response, Mace expressed that as a Jedi he wouldn't understand, but as a human, he could understand more than Anakin could for whatever reason accept. Anakin needed to remember one important thing. Just because the Jedi were raised and trained to be Jedi didn't mean they didn't feel emotions of normal sentience. Skywalker's position lowered and Mace continued. He said that it takes dedication, care, determination, patience, and strong will to be a Jedi. Not just anyone can do it, and that's why the Council had its fears about Anakin's abilities as a boy. Perhaps their code was too strict or their motives too focused, but it was what they were and what they were taught. Mace told Anakin that he needed to embrace the chip on his shoulder, to stop allowing the past control him and to focus on the present. He was truly sorry that he had to live with his mother passing, especially in such an unnatural way, but revenge is a continuous cycle that never satisfies. Anakin in a way understood, but he still didn't know where they were going. He would only understand when they woke up, and they landed in the middle of the Dune Sea on Tatooine. Mace was waiting inside the sand when Skywalker came down the ramp. Windu turned around and told Skywalker that if he wanted to be a Jedi, then he'd have to embrace the path of peace, patience, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Anakin didn't know what that meant, but Mace stood up and started forward. Skywalker asked about their lightsabers, and Mace just waved his hand. They, within an hour or so, would run into a scout of Tusken raiders. Not much had been said between Anakin and Mace on the way here. It had been nothing but just sand. When they met the scouts, Mace used hand symbols to communicate with them. This was something Anakin never heard about. The truth about Tuskens is, just like many around the galaxy, they were sentient beings. Not all of them were perfect. Hell, just like many people, many of them were flawed. But the actions of a few did not account for the lack of action from the many. They ended up following the Tuskens back to a village. Anakin was very tense the entire time, and the Tusken raiders could sense this. This is where Mace's instruction continued as he informed Skywalker to calm his heart and his mind. These were forgiving people, but first Anakin must walk their path to earn their forgiveness. Mace was being quiet about the whole thing, because he knew keeping Anakin in the know would allow him to have comfort. The most growth for any individual happens when they're the least comfortable. He knew Skywalker would only achieve his potential through being pushed in a way Kenobi never had the strength to push him. The Council believed Obi-Wan had done well, but Mace would fill in the gaps that only an inexperienced master would miss. This was the largest and most prevalent one for Anakin, and this would extend across a number of other issues in Anakin's own life. The Tusken raiders of this village would accept Anakin's apology, despite his slaughter not affecting this particular tribe. All the tribes, in one way or another, were connected people. They traded, they fought, they forgave, and they continued their cycles, just like normal people. Anakin must learn that there is forgiveness and reconciliation. As the tribe accepted his offers, he was given the chance to right his wrongs in the future by doing a spirit walk, thanks to a warm welcome by the chiefess. Anakin's spirit vision would be guided by the Force. as what was bestowed by the Tusken Raiders. During this acceptance of the Tusken spirits, Skywalker would see his actions and then understand what it brought. He would see the carnage it left for those that found those who were killed, families torn apart just like his own. His revenge didn't stop the cycle, it only perpetuated it. The Tuskens who found the massacre waged war on another tribe, and it brought more pain and death to others, ones that were far too innocent to be part of this situation. The aggressors had since died off. The actions of a few do not compare to the inaction of the many. Anakin's spirit journey did not end there. He would be guided forward to a place he didn't know and a person he would become. The vision was painful as it was terrifying. As he came out of the vision, he fell to the ground and looked around with bloodshot eyes. Mace was seated right in front of him, and Mace looked down, telling Anakin that there was one final step to this ritual. Skywalker would have to remove the glove for his golden wrist. Instead of the glove he had, it'd be replaced by cloth, gifted to him by the Tusken Raiders. They wrapped Anakin's wrist up, and tightly interweaved the cloth so that it could never be ripped off during battle. They gifted it to him to protect him in the heat of combat. He may have not been one with their tribe, but he was one with the great seas of Tatooine, born and bred here. He would carry all of Tatooine with him. It was at this point when Anakin understood that there was more than just resenting the past. It was over, it was done with. If he gave up his resentment on the past, then he could turn that negativity into positivity in the present. Once they were done, the Jedi starship was pulled up to the hill overlooking the Tusken camp. Mace went up to the medical droid and retrieved his gifts for the Tuskens and brought it back down to them. Anakin hadn't moved an inch since his spirit vision. He was just trying to understand what had just happened. He turned to Mace and watched the shipment of gifts be delivered to the chiefess before he walked over to Anakin and reached his hand out. Skywalker grabbed it and he was pulled up. There wasn't a word said, but Anakin followed Mace's footsteps as they bowed and signed what was a thank you to the chiefess and her people. They then walked back inside the vessel and lifted off. Mace again didn't say a word. He just wanted Anakin to think about it, process the experience, and then speak about it with his mind wrapped around what he could understand. Skywalker, after a couple hours, would have his thoughts together, and their conversation would pick up from there. It would be one in which Anakin would finally show that he understood what it took to be a Jedi. The path wasn't easy, because it wasn't supposed to be. What Mace did for Skywalker was bring him home and allow him to learn how to do it himself. It was very big in Mace's philosophy as an instructor. He was a guide, but the largest strength of an individual comes from within. That can't come from that guide. Whether it be through their own understanding or their own comprehension of a topic, he believed that as a guide, he could give them the start. They would just have to find the finish. It maybe wasn't the most straightforward way of teaching, but looking at his track record, it was very efficient. Depa Billaba, after all, joined the High Council before she hit her 30s, just as Mace Windu had. This way of instructing was difficult on Skywalker, and it was a perfect match for what he needed. Mace understood this about Anakin. He needed to be pushed in a way that Obi-Wan was never able to. It wasn't Obi-Wan's failure, rather his inexperience that costed Anakin that time. Anyways, Skywalker spoke to Mace about his thoughts and his understandings, but he was still missing something. Anakin still believed he should have taken his vengeance out on those few who did the crimes against his mother. Sure, as a human, that'd be more acceptable of a response, but as a Jedi, their weapons were never for offense, only defense. To actively hunt would be wrong, but Mace couldn't necessarily blame Skywalker, though he never said as such. The lesson he was supposed to learn is that his power comes from lack of aggression. If he focused solely on the strength of the blade, or his saber combat, then he would never reach what he could become. Though Mace never spelled it out, he needed Skywalker to come around to the realization on his own. It did take time, but their talk lasted for several hours. Anakin also did reveal the nature of his vision when he did the spirit walk, and he expressed that it truthfully frightened him. Mace then reminded Anakin of his earliest teachings. The Force is always in motion. Despite the reality of what happened to his mother, if he tried to avoid the vision, he could end up causing it. Anakin didn't understand, and perhaps that was the point. Mace expressed that on numerous occasions he had visions of his closest friends dying, and even his student dying, but he could not interfere. If he did, he could cause it. Anakin didn't understand how to let go, but that was the most difficult part of coming into harmony with the Force. What affects the world around you cannot be controlled by you as an individual. All you can do is respond. If you respond by trying to control, then the uncontrollable will react. If you let go, then you can embrace whatever awaits you. Mace stopped and said that one of the Jedi Order's first Grand Masters had a famous quote. He didn't remember it word for word, but it was spoken on the island of Ahsoka, where the Jedi Order was born. It was said that an individual's mind was like water. When agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if said individual allows it to settle, then it becomes clear. On Ahch-To, it was easy to see the violent waves on the shore and the peaceful abode inside the tower at the top of the temple. That individual Grand Master explained it at the top of the temple island. Mace looked back to Anakin and expressed that if he didn't learn how to let go, he could cause more harm than good. Only Anakin had to live with the inexplicable terror he saw in his spirit walk, but he would take Mace's word and put it into practice. Though as it was with Anakin, it was difficult for him to control, and one day, long after he and Mace went to Tatooine, he let it slip. It was a moment of weakness, just like on Tatooine, one far greater than he'd ever shown before in front of Ahsoka. It startled her, enough for her to come to Mace Windu. Mace did tell her that if she ever saw anything to inform him, and she had since seen things, but this particular experience was enough for her to go to him immediately. Mace, instead of taking his time with this, took Anakin out of the war. They moved across the galaxy to an untouched system. The planet Lothal had a Jedi temple on it, and it also had a far greater secret that lay beneath it. Mace studied it before, and as of recently, had been studying it. He was hopeful to find answers and potential keys to ending the war. He was very close to cracking the case too, but it was thanks to Ahsoka that he was able to uncover what he was searching for. If he hadn't, then he wouldn't have ever gotten to where he was. Mace was hot on the trail when Ahsoka contacted him from the Mid-Rim. It was about an hour after she and Anakin left for Coruscant that Mace was informed that his troops would be moving out for a campaign. That particular campaign would have sidetracked him into never having the chance to go back and find this temple in Lothal. But thanks to Ahsoka, he found the final pieces of information, and when they landed on Lothal, Windu and Skywalker entered an old Jedi temple. In a similar fashion to what happened on Tatooine, Anakin had another vision, though this time, Mace had his own vision to accompany that. They both varied. Anakin's had to deal with being out of control, and Mace's led to the failure of the Jedi as a whole. They were sick and twisted messages from the Force, but instead of them ending in the main room they started in, the Force reacted to the presence of the Chosen One. Truthfully, during Anakin's vision, he reached out his hands to stop Dooku from killing Ahsoka, and the floor opened up underneath him, which did the same in Mace's vision too. Skywalker and Windu found themselves in an external universe, one where all of time could be accessed. Anakin didn't know what this was, but because Mace had been researching, he knew that this was something that could help the Jedi. But there was a certain irony. Reaction to the future could elicit a change in the present that would create a different future. Mace told Anakin that if they continued further, they would find information that would completely offset their mind on the future. If they were ready to, then they'd be burdened with knowledge that couldn't just end the war, but reveal who the Sith Lord was, tell them who wins or who dies or how it happens. He wanted Anakin to know that it could be very off-putting and strenuous on the mind. But Skywalker was ready, and the two Jedi moved forward. Considering everything was changed the moment Mace and Anakin went to Tatooine, Skywalker was still foolish enough to not take every lesson to heart. Things just transpired differently. Instead of an altercation in the Chancellor's office between 4 Jedi Masters, there was a fight between Anakin and Palpatine. When Skywalker lost, he was captured, forced to watch the galaxy get turned on its head. And the only way he could, he surrendered himself to the dark side so that he could save Padme. The whole Padme situation wasn't explicitly revealed in the portal. It was simply that Anakin was trying to save someone he cared about. After the clones turned on the Jedi, Anakin killed off escaping Jedi and then was defeated by Obi-Wan on Mustafar, burning nearly to death before becoming a metallic monster. How does one just accept that? Anakin didn't know how to. The fate for Windu was much more heroic. He died inside the temple, defending his brothers and sisters, the last one inside the temple as it was orbital bombarded. They ended it there. They could have gone further, but they didn't want to. Anakin felt the burden of his failure, but so did Mace. It was all a mess, and they had both failed. The Jedi were failures, but now they knew who the Sith Lord was, which was something. Anakin expressed a desire to kill Palpatine. He was outraged. He was seeing all of it come together in his mind. Every assassination attempt on Padme, every lie, every subtle adoration or compliment, every time Palpatine pulled him from a deadly arena of combat. It was all showing that Skywalker was capable of turning, and he couldn't stand that, let alone killing fellow Jedi or fighting his father figure. It was horrendous. So were the words Obi-Wan shared after he defeated him. The two Jedi stood in silence. Skywalker was filled with rage, but Mace silently wept. As Master of the Order, it was his responsibility to care for every single Jedi. That burden fell on him, especially when he didn't kill Dooku on Geonosis, so he put the entire Clone Wars on his shoulders. It was wrong, and he knew it, but the burden of failing 10,000 Jedi was a pain he couldn't walk around. Instead of it being just his choice affecting him, it affected the lives of every single Jedi inside that order. They stood in silence for what felt like hours, before coming to a resolution. Mace knew if he acted openly, it would lead to the events they just saw. It had to. If they confronted Sidious, then it clicked. He realized that this future was a direct result of what they saw here. He knew that if he tried to stop Anakin, he would go anyways to fight Palpatine. The burden was on Mace. He almost couldn't live with it. His bringing Anakin to Lothal would be the very death of the Jedi Order. He could not prevent it though. The Force was always in motion. And so how does one manage that with someone especially as unpredictable as Skywalker? Mace knew it was as simple as not interfere. If Mace told Anakin to not do what they saw, then he'd be trying to change fate, which would then put it into action. Skywalker inversely was curious where Mace's mind went, and then Mace was adamant that they meditate on it. Skywalker was outraged. They knew who the Sith Lord was. If they acted on it, then, and just as it had for Mace, it clicked for Anakin. The Force was always in motion, and now the future had just completely been changed. They left Lothal and returned to Coruscant. What followed was weeks of inaction. Mace pondered his own thoughts on the matter, and realistically, Anakin had his own struggles with it. He wanted to act as himself, but after what he learned on Tatooine and what he figured out on Lothal, he could bring in balance not just the Force but the galaxy and everyone he cared about. He learned, and it took seeing what his actions could do and what they could tragically affect for him to see what they did to others. He cared greatly about those around him, and that went for the Jedi as well. Ahsoka never knew, but she could tell that Anakin was acting irregular. But she understood that Mace was helping him through his own struggles. Anakin never peeped a word of it. He just allowed the Force to move in motion. It was a tongue twister in his mind, but he trusted the Force more than ever, meditating and focusing and reciting unlike he ever had. All he knew is he needed to focus on himself and train his student to the best of her abilities. Windu had a couple interactions with Sidious, but never let on that he knew anything. Mace understood that it was Anakin who lost to Sidious, but it became evident that his actions would change the original timeline that they saw in Lothal. He revealed his knowledge to the Council, and as a reaction, the Jedi slowly and subtly started pulling out of the war, even dispersing many of their members and their archivists to a multitude of former outposts and temples around the galaxy for safekeeping. In a cunning move made by the Master of the Order, he and a number of other Jedi decided to follow the Chancellor. It was after months of indecision. He wanted to do this a number of times, but he could tell that Palpatine was catching on to the Jedi withdrawal. The Jedi were able to track Palpatine to the works across the city. Palpatine and Dooku were meeting. Sidious was going to enact Order 66, wipe out the Jedi, and then take over the Republic with a separatist movement. It would be a bait and switch. Dooku would be the political face, but Sidious would hold all the power. It was attainable, as long as they used the droid armies to their potential. As Dooku and Sidious talked, R2 was recording everything. The Jedi snuck in, and Anakin and R2 moved out the back, quickly getting the droid to Padme so she could use the information to tarnish Palpatine's reputation inside the Senate. What followed would be a clash of the millennia. Dooku and Sidious would be ambushed. The Council, including Anakin, when he came back in, would jump the Sith. Dooku and Sidious were impressive, and both were like cornered animals, all of them fighting for their lives. The Sith used the relics in the altar to feed their energy, which drastically drained that of the Jedi present. The battle between light and dark would cost many Jedi lives. Amongst the Jedi killed would be Ki-Adi-Mundi, Eth Koth, Stas Ali, Lo Kun, Shak-Ti, Saesee Tiin, and Oba Rensesis. The Jedi injured would include Obi-Wan, who lost his left forearm, Anakin, whose shin was sliced down the middle, and Kit Fisto, who lost his chin and his legendary smile. The dark presence within the chambers of the Sith was overbearing, and it completely took over the Jedi. It was a costly battle, but it resulted in victory, though it did not mean the end of the Clone Wars. Despite the Jedi having the necessary evidence to end the war, Grievous wouldn't stop his pursuit of victory. The Republican CIS governments were able to negotiate thanks to the Mandalore Accords, hosted by Duchess Satine. But Grievous hired not just super tactical droids, but heads of corporations within the Separatist Council, and even Admiral Trench joined his ranks. They had a formidable power, and in their war against the Republic, they'd cost the lives of millions of citizens, thousands of clones, and hundreds of Jedi. They would elongate the war by another year from where it should have ended, making the Clone Wars 3.5 years long. Due to the war against the Separatist rebels, Luke and Leia would never be conceived. Instead, Skywalker wouldn't have a child for another 3 years, a boy named Jan Nabari Skywalker. The child would be kept secret from the Jedi Order, as Master Skywalker committed to stay with the Jedi as a Master on the High Council. Outside of Skywalker's life, the war against Grievous's rebels would include the destruction of the crime syndicates that joined up, believing they could garner power at the end of the war. They didn't. Grievous lied to get their support, and it led to Republic occupation of the Outer Rim. which led to a restructuring of a broken society. The new Chancellor of the Republic, Dagon Dims, the son of Dagonet, the Republic senator that tried to suppress Master Dooku on Romanar, would become Chancellor. He would be the perfect, rather young, individual to take this place for the Republic. He didn't follow his father's footsteps, and he became an outspoken voice for the Republic expansion and steps towards a positive future. Mace and Anakin's relationship would develop over the years, as they learned to respect and care deeply for the other. They are best friends, and Anakin learned a lot from Mace. Things he wouldn't have learned if he kept his ears closed. Skywalker being forced into the uncomfortable on Tatooine led him to finding the right set of skills to instill change that didn't just affect his life, but the lives of an entire galaxy, now finding its own peace. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Benjamin Wells, Django Fett Clone, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Grandaddy Bane, Laliand, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewo 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Seth Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Gunley 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortis Like Star Wars, Airbus, Rex Wolf, the man 3 first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lieutenant Wing for supporting the channel. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patreon. There are full videos available for Patreon members, Grand Tier and Master Tier only. Otherwise, let's talk about this story. So I wanted to focus on the more mythical side of the story. The spiritual elements of the Tusken Raiders was really interesting in Book of Boba Fett, and I thought that'd be a really interesting way to kind of bring Anakin back home and find peace with his past. I think something that always bothered him was like, especially you see during the Clone Wars when he goes to Tatooine with Ahsoka, is like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it, and like rejecting and acting as if it didn't happen doesn't really help you move forward. If you accept it, allow it to happen, and come to peace with it, then you can take all that energy and move it forward, and that's kind of the emphasis for Anakin there. And so I wanted it to feel mystical, but I also wanted the unknown to be a huge factor in it. The consistently changing timelines, because the Force is always in motion. It's always changing. One action changes an entire scenario. It's like I pull a chair and Darth Maul becomes the Emperor. It's something like that. So I wanted that element to be present in this as I built the relationship with Anakin and Mace that is kind of stagnant in the Clone Wars and even Revenge of the Sith. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.